This incident happened in the month of January 2002. Peter Frake and his family came to live in Winnsmouth, a town in Scotland. In fact, Peter was the captain of a merchant ship and had to spend most of his time travelling far and wide on business. Winnsmouth town was surrounded by mountains on all sides. The people here were of very peaceful nature. Peter had an ancestral house in this town in which he came to live for the first time. Peter previously lived in Romania, where he married Eliza, and they now had 16-year-old daughter Nancy and 10-year-old son Harry. When he reached his house, he saw that it was an old European building of the 17th century. The house was looked after by an old man whose name was Charles. Charles welcomed them all and took them inside. He made everyone soup and made them drink it. He was talking about the beauty of Winnsmouth when suddenly Eliza said, "By the way, Charles, whose house was this house before? Earlier this house belonged to a woman named Maria," said Charles. "So where does her family live now?" said Eliza. "She lived alone, ma'am," said Charles. Then Peter, standing near the window, said, "Yes, after Maria's death, this house came to a company called Smoke, and my grandfather bought this house in an auction of that company. Grandfather gave this house to Charles's father for maintenance and Dad gave me." Charles interrupted. "Why didn't Maria marry?" Eliza asked. "She was engaged, but," Charles said, "but what? The day after the engagement, her fiancé Henry was found decapitated in the forest, and Maria, he also died after a few days." "How?" Eliza kept asking question after question. Then Charles's face turned pale and he said, "Ma'am, there are some questions which are better not to be asked." Harry and Nancy were horrified to hear what Charles and Eliza were saying. Seeing the frightened faces of both of them, Peter turned the topic around. "So Charles, tell me, is there a good school here?" "Yes, there is a school, but unfortunately our house is on the edge of the town and the school is inside the town, but we will have to stay," Peter said. "You guys go to your rooms and freshen up. After that I will show you the area outside the house," said Charles. Everyone went to their respective rooms. After entering the room, Peter said, "Charles has cleaned the room well." "Yes, it is. Even at the age of 60, he is very active," Eliza said. Peter started putting clothes in the cupboard and Eliza started putting her books. Actually, Eliza was very fond of reading books and she also knew Spanish, French and Scottish languages. While putting down the books, Eliza said to Peter, "Peter, I don't know why. This place seemed a bit strange to me." Peter took Eliza's hand in his and said, "I know this place is a bit strange, but due to financial constraints we will have to spend a few days here." A few days or a few years?" Eliza said, looking through her eyes. Then both Peter and Eliza laughed. Later, Eliza also set up the rooms of both the children. Among the children, Nancy was a very quiet and shy girl, whereas Harry was very mischievous. When all four of them freshened up and came out, they saw Charles watering the flower beds. But the rose plants in that bed were quite healthy, but the plants of other flowers were completely withered. Charles understood from their gaze and said, "I too do not understand why other flowering plants wither here except roses. Even thistle does not grow here." Peter said, "Maybe the soil here is good for roses." "So you were going to show us outside, Charles?" Eliza said, "Oh, I forgot. Let me show you," said Charles. The main door of Peter's house faced east, and about 300 meters away from there was a paved road that led into the town. Charles took them all to see the back of the house. There was a dense forest behind the house. Then Harry said, "What is that?" When everyone looked in that direction, they saw an old building which looked like a church. Charles said, "Oh, that's an old church." Eliza said, "Then let's go to the church." Then suddenly Charles said, "No, we will go some other time." But at everyone's insistence, Charles agreed to go towards the church. On reaching the church, he saw that there were 3 old tombs from the 18th century. One of the graves was that of Sir Brick Lays, the other was that of Madame Helena Lays, and the third grave, which was at some distance from those 2 graves, had Maria 1670-1702 written on it. Everyone moved forward and went inside the church. The church was not in good condition, yet a strange peace was spread there. "How old is this church?" asked Eliza. "Ma'am, is about 400 to 450 years old. It is the oldest church of this city, but due to negligence and poor condition, it is in this condition today," Nancy asked after seeing the melted candles. "Who is the priest here?" "Lawrence Verdi, who lives in the woods behind your house." Eliza went near the church window, cleaned it with her hands and started looking outside smiling, when suddenly her smile disappeared.